Hey everybody, before starting off today's video, I just wanted to make a quick announcement. I'm really grateful for all the positive comments, subscribers, and the like. However, YouTube's algorithm is a fickle monster to deal with, which is why my most popular video has nearly 20,000 views right now, while most of my others are looking pretty bare bones in comparison. That being said, if you enjoy my content, a comment on the video and a share would go a long way to help me reach an even bigger audience and would mean the absolute world to me. As well, if you're already subscribed, please make sure to hit the little bell icon next to the subscribe button to make sure you're getting my stuff in your inbox when I release new content. With that out of the way, enjoy the video.
Pack my box with 5,000 liquor jugs. I'll be waiting to find what you're speaking of. Have you ever been inside that old fishery, honey? I may just have to read up on my history. Throw my 16 beers in the trucker bag. I'll be waiting to find where the meaning's at. Internet kids got me down, but I ain't having that. I think I dreamed too much for this forecast. I dreamt I made a toast to the sky, and for once I felt like it would be alright in time. Great powers outside of my sight will bring this society down.
What a beautiful day. Jeez, my sleep schedule sucks. What's even going on here? Which funny guy did this? Well, the original plan I had isn't gonna work. Maybe we should talk about some scary stuff instead. I know there's plenty of that to draw from in my childhood memories. What remains of them. Ah, childhood. Such a pleasant time, full of joy and wonder and terrifying mayhem. Yeah, we've all been there. Scary stuff that screwed us up as kids. Of course, when our tiny brains aren't fully aware brains, much less people brains, we tend to get really freaked out by basically anything remotely frightening. And everybody's got one unique thing or another that gave them the heebie-jeebies growing up. So, in the wake of tons of videos like this and nearly 3 whole years late to the party, I've decided to make my own list of terrifying childhood oddities. So, let's take it from the top with number 10. Oh, and by the way, this list isn't in any particular order, really. In terms of scariness, not really. I just decided to go in a list down like this because I like the structure of numbers. Number 10! Let's start off with one that's rather ubiquitous for my generation. The Scary Maze game is a terrifying flash game where you navigate some actually incredibly easy mazes that it warns you is only navigable with an extreme amount of focus and elite gamer skills. Of course, if you're a dumb 6-year-old with no concept of being bamboozled before, you'll probably fall prey to this bait and switch and be awarded with a giant flashing close-up image of Reagan from The Exorcist, accompanied by a blood-curdlingly loud scream, played on loop for your sensitive baby ears to melt from. I remember distinctly the first occasion under which I was exposed to this game. You see, I and a friend from school were over at his house on his computer, which was set up at a cabinet in the dining area. We were the type of kids who played tons of flash games online all the time, and back then the internet was a godless hellscape where literal toddlers could basically just click on anything with no recourse. It was a bloodbath, let me tell you. Anyway, so we see this maze game, which, by the way, no, it wasn't called the Scary Maze game back then. If it were, I'm fairly certain we would just never have clicked on it in the first place. It was just called Maze. And of course, why would we not click on any old thing we found on the internet? That's like the #1 rule of the internet. If it exists, click on it. So of course we did exactly that, as this diabolical trap suggested, and once greeted with the terrifying image, I immediately responded with, "Hey, this picture of Linda Blair is very pixelated. Whoever compressed this must have a very ancient computer." Okay, now, I screeched like a lemur mid-open heart surgery and dived to a faraway corner of the house as I possibly could manage to escape to. Of course, this didn't terrify me for too long after the initial incident, but it still made me wary of maze games from that point on, or any games that told me to focus closely, too. Maybe Linda Blair is why I was bad at math all along.
Number 9.
Who Framed Roger Rabbit is one of my favorite movies in the whole world. It's super charming, it has lovely animation that still holds up to this day, and overall, it's just gushing love from every possible orifice. Okay, let me rephrase that. It's a great movie. Unfortunately, the first time I ever saw Roger Rabbit, as in love with it as I was, one particular scene really messed with me. And if you've ever seen it yourself, you know exactly what I'm talking about. The scene where Judge Doom is revealed to be the Toon who killed Eddie's brother.
I talk! Just wait!
Yeah, looking back on this, it's not really that frightening, but something about the weird hybrid of animation on Christopher Lloyd's wrinkly clay meat face sent shivers through my spine as a tot. Maybe it's the Uncanny Valley effect, or maybe it's the giant buzzsaw arm he uses to gleefully cut through actual steel before turning it toward a vulnerable, scared adult man. You know, one of those two things.
Number 8.
Dragon Ball Z is super cheesy shonen fun, and to be honest, I'm sure it's not the first thing you'd suspect to pop up on somebody's trauma list. And no, this isn't because of Cell. Oddly enough, this is about Nappa. Yeah, the big bald guy who tagged along with Vegeta to kill every human character ever in the Saiyan arc. Back when I was a kid, I didn't really watch Dragon Ball Z, but I was tangentially aware that it existed. One night while flipping through channels, I stumbled into the middle of an ongoing episode of DBZ on Cartoon Network, and I don't remember much, but I do remember Nappa's bloody face as he stormed a frightened child with killing intent. My brain was a little too small to remember much more than that, but it definitely left an impression. You see, when I was a kid, the most violence I had seen in a show was slapstick cartoon violence, so seeing actual blood was a huge deal I was not yet ready for. It was too adult for me, and that's probably why for years after that I had a strange aversion to Dragon Ball Z. Of course, later in life I got into it, and I got into it big time. It was a long time in the making, but I finally got to enjoy screaming muscle men powering up over and over again.
Number 7.
If you're a kid who hates dolls with every fiber of their being, you'll be unhappy to know that this little bastard isn't doing you any favors anytime soon. Yeah, who saw this one coming? Chucky's on a lot of people's personal demons list because he's just so darn creepy. The knife, the twisted smile, the fact that he's a ginger, I mean, it's all there. Terrifying. My fear of Chucky as a child was so bad that I couldn't even walk past DVD covers of the movies in Blockbuster without freaking out. Once I was scrolling in Envision-free form, God, that's an old sentence, and somebody had a form signature that had a picture of Chucky on it, and I immediately shut the computer off, ran downstairs, and cried. And you can bet when the theater my family frequented had a giant Seed of Chucky poster, I was not a happy camper during the entirety of that movie's theatrical run. There's only one problem about this particular fear, though. You see, I don't know if you've watched the Chucky movies recently, but they're not really that scary. I mean, for the time, sure, I could see where plenty of people were freaked out by them, but now, they just don't really hold up all that well. Chucky sounds less like someone who wants me dead and more like a slightly disinterested old guy, and I find it kind of hard to suspend my disbelief about not being able to just run away from a doll. I mean, he's a doll. His legs are a record low for short legs. You don't even need to kick him in the knees to get away because number one, he just doesn't have knees, and number two, if a doll came to life and attacked me, all I'd really have to do is... yeah, that.
Number 6.
Okay, so this one's a little weird. You know Adult Swim? Sure you do. Okay, cool. We're all on the same page then. For some ungodly reason, the commercial bumps on Adult Swim really freaked me out as a kid. I don't know what it was about them. They were just so weird and unsettling. Even just the white text on black background bumps would tend to give me the creeps. I hear that Adult Swim intentionally made weird and creepy commercials to ward off kids, and I mean, it wouldn't shock me. And I mean, if my searches into this have told me anything, it's that if I grew up slightly later than I did, Adult Swim commercials would have freaked me out even worse than they already did. Like, what is going on here? Oh. Yeah, Adult Swim? Yeah, that's fair.
Number 5.
Okay, just... please don't laugh at me. Jeff the Killer! Not the story, just the photo. I remember reading this one freezing winter afternoon, more like evening, more like 4 a.m. On Christmas break up in my attic. It was cold and dark, and this photo was the worst thing ever. Of course, upon reading the related creepypasta, I realized it had tons of logical errors, spelling mistakes, and a terrible plot, so that part didn't really tickle my scare bone quite that much, but the face, man, ugh, just displeasing. Of course, now it seems like tweens aren't as scared of Jeff the Killer as much as they just want to date him, which is equally as terrifying. I mean, really, this is a face only a mother could love. Oh wait, she doesn't? Whoa. Jeez, now that's just tragic, isn't it?
Number 4.
So I mentioned this in my last video, but the Art Museum episode of Detective Conan, that being episode 8 of the anime, really screwed me up as a kid. Don't get me wrong, I love me some Conan, but it was just a teensy bit too intense for me, still in elementary school, to see a man be impaled through the throat with a giant sword. I didn't even finish watching this episode, instead electing to turn the TV off and run downstairs. I backslid on my no nightlight policy for this episode, which is kind of interesting considering I don't know what connotation my fear was even implying. Was I afraid a knight was going to come through the TV and stab me? Because that sounds like a really terrible horror movie just waiting to be kickstarted. I can hear the title now. Knight. He's a knight in shining armor. But it's not shining from his courage. It's shining from the glimmer of your blood.
Number 3.
Oh, right. Sorry, I'll move on. Voodoo Vince is one of my favorite underrated video game gems of all time. Originally released only for the OG Xbox by Beep Industries, it stars Vince, a voodoo doll from New Orleans who is tasked with rescuing his creator, Madame Charmaine, from the clutches of the incompetent, fez-wearing Cosmo the Inscrutable. After being brought to life by a pinch of powerful zombie dust, also taken from Charmaine's shop, it's a really charming, excellent mid-2000s 3D platformer with a good sense of humor, a killer jazz soundtrack, and a palpable atmosphere in terms of the New Orleans flavor of its environments and characters. A remaster was released in recent years, and you can snag it on either Xbox One or Steam, which I'd highly recommend either way. Anyway, one of the areas of the game takes place within a creepy mansion called Brusque Manor, where to progress you'll need to do some busy work for a creepy, disfigured doll with a temper who might be a murderer named
Dolly.
Of course you are.
She already freaked me out pretty badly when I first arrived to her introduction as a child.
No, short stuff.
But what really put the icing on the trauma cake is the boss encounter of her area of the game. I present to you the lead-up cutscene, unedited and fully intact from how I originally experienced it.
This is the train?
Isn't it wonderful?
I don't know if you've noticed, but this is a toy. The only place it's going is nowhere! You know, just once. I'd like things to work out normally. No monsters, nobody is insane, no possessed sheep herders. Is it me? Do I attract crazy people?
Nothing I do is good enough for you. Nothing makes you happy. Why do I keep trying?
Whoa, hold on now, sweetheart. Let's calm down and have some tea or something.
Yeah, as you can imagine, I was not too pleased about it. I immediately shut the game off and I slept in my parents' room that night. I was not a happy child, let me tell you. For years after that, I would play the game but always restart upon reaching Brusque Manor for this very reason. Of course, years later still, I would eventually buck up and brave the boss encounter, and what I found was actually not too bad. Once you got past the menace of her design, I mean, she literally shoots projectile missiles that look like poodles at you and says, "Eat poodle." Still though, she did me a scare, and for that, she gets on the list.
My hero.
Right, whatever.
Number 2.
Speaking of twos, Rayman 2 The Great Escape. See what I did there? It's an awesome game that basically needs no introduction, seeing as it's been ported to so many freaking consoles. I'm surprised I can't play it on a urinal yet. However, one trickier encounter with one of the game's many enemies would trip me up as a kid, to say the least. After all, here I was minding my own business when— holy shit, what the hell is Needless to say, that wasn't fun in the slightest. And even after somehow managing to beat that level, my torment continued when later down the line I reached another level and—
Again? You are not welcome in my home! The power of Christ compels—
And number 1.
is been drowned. Yep. Yeah, okay, I know this creepypasta has a bit of a weird reputation because it's kind of joined the ranks of the weird creepypasta fan bases, but at the time, back in its heyday, reading this stuff really scared the piss out of me. The expert editing, the fairly well-crafted story, which still blows pretty much all other video game creepypasta out of the water nowadays, hell, even blows a lot of regular creepypasta out of the water nowadays, and the strange feeling that something was watching you when you approached this content was something truly unnerving, to say the very least. Unfortunately, not as many people on the internet know about the continuation of this story that followed after the original creepypasta, and I think that's a shame because as someone who was there in real time as a tween, let me just say, that was nerve-wracking, but uniquely engaging all the same. You see, unbeknownst to my naive self at the time, I had just stumbled into the very first ARG, or alternate reality game, I had ever participated in. The sense of direct influence over the story's direction with a community of people was honestly exhilarating, and as we dug more into the strange moon cult website, met dead ends with song commands, lost characters, and were given access to the now defunct within hubris forms, every step of the way I was hooked. It was really the first thing that had scared the ever-loving crap out of me, but still somehow left me wanting more of it. And I guess that's a little funny, isn't it? There's no denying that when it comes to horror, I was a very sensitive kid. I was a wimp, and I will gladly accept that title because it's fairly accurate. But something about horror has always somehow stuck in my mind, become something of a roller coaster for the brain, a thrill that invites me to indulge a little in the increase of my pulse and the sweat of my palms. If you told me when I was still having nightly murder dreams involving Chucky cutting my stubby legs off that when I grew up, one of my favorite genres would be horror, I'd have laughed in your face. No way, no how. But yet, here I am. Led from a gateway starting with a haunted cartridge and leading to so many other richly interesting and twisted tales. So, hey, maybe horror's not all that bad, right? Maybe if we face our fears every now and then, we can find something to enjoy about the experience. But I swear to God, if you ever jump scare me, I'll set you on fire. Hey everybody, thanks for watching my video about me being a little pansy baby when I was a baby. If you didn't see stuff in my list that scared you as a kid, then maybe you should leave a comment letting us all know what things scared you the most. Because, I don't know, it's just fun to share, even if it's really embarrassing. And of course, as always, if you want to see the continued creation of my videos come to fruition, then you can always donate to me on Patreon, where I have tier rewards and stuff for all you good people that do the money thing. Also, I got a Tumblr at NezumiVA.tumblr.com where I talk about stuff very rarely, but sometimes make announcements about videos and stuff that you can also tune into. And until next time, everybody take care of yourselves and don't let Chucky bite. He's a real ankle nibbler, that one.